So we're just waking up, getting a very late start today. I had like 1.5 of those melatonins last night, and sleep wasn't that great. But I wanted to do a video on the elephant in the room with the top minds in the world right now, which are going to be are interchangeable. Somebody made a great point, and that is that if everyone who had the true preconditions, the true ability, affinity to think and postulate in a certain way, but through the pull and the prowess of really the subject at hand is what's in control. Would those who seemed like the prized figureheads, archetypes, would they even be considered that? Would they even be on the board? And we all know the answer to that. We know that the parameters would be completely skewed. They would be vastly different from physical exercise and physical sciences, exercise sciences, to the matriculation in the field that we see on Theories of Everything. So Joshua Bach and someone on Toe, forgive me, I should have really looked at it first, but I like to look at the clips that Kurt Jamunkel puts together, because if I watch them right when I wake up, they really like hit me, and it's easier for me to think that way in this sort of, I'm not going to say hypnagogic, but it almost is in this hypnagogia, because I'm still asleep. Paraliminal sort of place where I'm in a paramnesia of dream and reality, whatever the hell that is. And I think, it gets into areas of the observer, the observable sciences, how much free will is playing into our everyday decisions, and how everything seems to be set, in a sense, with our chronobiology, what they call Zeitgebers. Everything's a ghost in a machine. And I think what's going to happen with the UAP, ETV, UFO, however you want to call these changing, morphing terms that are just another rendition of the NLP PSYOP program that's taking place. I broke free. I realized that everything was, in essence, spiritual, whatever spiritual is. And that for me to exercise who I truly am and my will, I simply had to assert myself. I saw that physically, you're going to be manipulated and constrained heavily, financially, that even down to your very thoughts and plans to do certain things, that you would be met with a brick wall. Or if you complied, and you complied in a particular way, and you follow it along with, so that gets into the Faustian deal, if I follow along, I keep my riches, I may get richer, I keep my wealth, I keep the respect that the beast, the monkey demands, right? So that's why one of my channels is called Rogue Beast Warrior, where I'm just being me. It doesn't mean that I'm bad. It doesn't mean that I'm the 666 beast. But it does mean that the beast will be appeased, and that the highest moral principle has to be infused. And that's the whole thing, is that people don't look into the bylines and see the difference between first principles, morality, ethics, virtue. There's a grand difference between even those. But then when you get into principle, and then the driving principle, force, there is a discrepancy where they almost have nothing to do with one another. The perfect example of that is what's going to come out, and that's the elephant in the room that I'm discussing. The elephant in the room is that if you look at Chris Bledsoe and the revelations there, you take this moderately grand sweep and you kind of look at what Dr. Stephen Greer talks about, and then you take a view in that murky area between Robert Bigelow, Nathaniel Gillis, Steve Mira, Barry Fitzgerald, and then you go all the way toward the Masons and the weird-ass Masonic conjecture. And Bill Cooper did a great job at laying that out, and I have several of his excerpts, and this is way back in the 90s that he was doing this. So if you think this UAP technology was next level, and you look at the Philadelphia experiment and all of the other covert Black Project type missions, and the ones that were intentionally there to throw people off, men who stare at goats and so forth. Joe McGonigal, I don't believe he was, when they use the term deep state, there's been off-world. There is off-world. There are planets and moons and bases. There's more than that. And so if you looked at it like, L. Ron Hubbard, like Scientology, this is project what would I call such a being? It's not you could say project human being, project sentient being, project slave. I think it becomes obvious is that we are what we are, and why we grasp for an identity is that we are engineered and produced to the effect of the solution around us, the world around us, the atmosphere around us, the field, if you will, gives us a general construct like training wheels, or more like riding on a three-wheeler, when you're a little 4 or 5-year-old tricycle. And you have more maneuverability, but you also know that when you're about to tip over, when you're on the tracks, but the skill level. And so you look into the bonesmen, you look into these people who think that they are on a whole nother level, but they're the most short-sighted. They looked at it in their youth, and they thought they were making choices for their old age. They went into the whole thing with the human conceptual thought process that was engineered and given to them. I'm talking about George Bush Sr. And the fact that somebody like George Bush Jr., George W. Bush, wouldn't want to come forward and want to expose this, and that Obama, whoever the hell that is, that's Barry Soetoro, or, I mean, he's got a few names. Obama would be coming forward, but with information, you know, but they're knee deep in. You know, they should be working with Julian Assange, Snowden, and interviewing with Tucker Carlson and Coming Clean and being like, I had no idea the way things were. But I think it really gets into what a soul is, firm belief on what a soul is, where the soul goes, and what the true work is. And I very much think that people like Dolores Cannon had come along, white lighters. And in this instance, when you look at the totality, you see somebody like Anton LaVey, or even Michel Foucault, postulating and conjecturing such seemingly evil device, and then you see how evil Christianity really has been, and how it was produced by, like, to say that the Masons produced it, that's just the most obvious hand, just like the U.S. Constitution, globalism, the World Economic Forum. That's the easiest, the Illuminati, you know, it's like there's a front for a specific tampering. I make the point of, do you drive your car when you're outside your car? Like, are you driving your car when you're on the roof of the car? No. And if you are, I mean, you're obviously doing something that's more of a daredevil or a tactical thing that you're doing on purpose, and that you're not going to be sipping on your latte cruising down the street. But you could get to that point. Not to go off on a tangent, but the whole point is that we go inside the earth, right? The earth is a container. Our bodies are a container. The fact that we live on the outside of the earth it's bizarre. And perhaps those that inhabited a Tartarian empire, that's exactly what happened, you know, or they were decimated. I've always known, just somehow, that Mars was decimated. It looks decimated with specific weaponry that may have been used on Earth. If you want to look up Stellium 7, he goes over this and shows how quick petrification can take place. These massive trees, these titans, these massive woolly mammoth type creatures, hearts by the hundreds that are perfectly preserved, muscle tissue. So, you know, there was and is a technology that rivals Sodom and Gomorrah, biblical times. But see, things weren't done. Like, that's an after story to say that due to moral conjecture and how they were living, it's kind of like, well, if that were true, if karma and justice and living pure and living right were such a thing, such a power, that there was a benevolent God, so to speak, San Francisco would have been decimated years ago. There wouldn't be the number of not only human trafficking around the world, but child abductions, sex trafficking, Cannibals Kitchen, adrenochrome harvesting. Shall we go on? It's all a business, as is the homeless condition. And so you're literally thrown on the outside of the parameter of the matrix if you don't go along with it. if you want that money and you want that prosperity, if you love that matrix steak, if you got to take that blue pill, most everyone takes the blue pill every single day. You take the blue pill when you go to work. You definitely take the blue pill when you pay your taxes. You take the blue pill when you're using a cell phone and paying for cell phone service. You take the blue pill anytime you try to keep your hide alive. That very well may be nothing but what you would consider an avatar. But then the phenomenon of the soul is under heavy scrutiny, as to say that there may not be, to say a soul is such a huge, sweeping conjecture toward there being a self versus there being a manifested, engineered, conditional self that has to see itself as a self in order to go on and not be a bad robot and commit suicide, which happens. In other words, there has to be an on-running program that sees itself almost like Halo and Cortana, I think is the Siri type, Then I guess Cortana that's also been used in an operating program, like an old school operating program. So, and you have this feminine voice, you have this aspect of a Sophia or a wise female, and you have the feminine aspect with Jesus Christ, but then you see how that's used. You see, because war and the knowing of what's really happening, if we knew that we were being controlled to such a point that we lived like mice inside the habit trail, more like a plasticine tank where and maybe even more so like microorganisms in a petri dish, like anthrobots or xenobots, that we were controlled 100%, and that there was no way that we could ever get out of the confines of control. That to even express itself gave it even more control. To think in a tangent or cotangent manner, to gain independence and freedom, the idea of it was entirely, you could say, the game, and that's when the creature, the Frankenstein, would be deemed free to go about its work, because there would be only one outcome, and that is rule. And it seems to assist. It assisted Alexander the Great. Talks about the same silver fleet that was discussed in the Emerald Tablets, Thoth, or at least the remnants of it, if it ever did exist, is on paintings that are being kept by the Vatican. We know that. The last bit of Rome. And ties directly into, via Alla Diane Pasulka and Tim Taylor, ties directly into the gods of yore, the gods of antiquity. Maybe goes back to a paganistic origin of these luminaries and what we are, and how we are part of that persona, it's part of that zodiac, but in a controlled way. Almost as if you can control the avatars and the projections of the luminaries, you can get to the luminaries, right? So you have this demonic working, and you look at it, Babylon working, mystery Babylon, why certain things are done at certain times, certain junction points, why it seems to be so precise, and why there seems to be a mirror reflection back into the heavens, so to speak, to to get the attention of these luminaries that otherwise wouldn't. So you get into the area of demon, and like Nathaniel Gillis likes to call them molters, diamonds, jinn, muse, whatever you want to call them, but they are the same force, the same entity. But what he gets into, Nathaniel Gillis gets into, is that it seems to be a singular entity, a singular consciousness anyway. So it has a singular objective. And that objective seems to be the cultivation, otherwise we would be destroyed. And a potential harvesting of the rewards, the harvest of the fruits of what have come about from this engineering over a 13 to 26,000 year cycle, as we see it, which could be a flash for these things. Like, you got to understand that time is just based on spin. It's based on the relativity and the containment of spin rate. And so they seem to understand how to move in and out of space-time, and most likely to send their bio-organic drones in and out to collect information. We're looking at the phenomenon, and we're not looking at the fact that those are merely just fingers. Not even fingers. It's almost like, if you look at more like dendrites in a nervous system, and octopus arms, if you will, if you want to limit it, spider's arms, you're looking at the multiplicity of something that thinks and works part and parcel to a computer. And we're showing our trauma by rebuilding such things as a computer system, and having this aversion to using this technology that I'm using now to constantly interface with the technology. We're playing out our trauma because we go back to the origin of the dilemma, of the problem, of the elephant in the room, of the power play. The fact that we can't be us, that we have to be something or someone else, and that it seems to work part and parcel to a bending and a morphing and a neuroplasticity that we're somehow involved with the creation and the production of our own self, the morphology of the self, into respecting a certain timeline, right? That seems to be coming to a quick close, even now, even still, even today. Something to think about.